Welcome to Her True Stories. If you're ready for a story about the most savage revenge you'll ever hear, then buckle up because today's tale will blow your mind. Hit that subscribe button right now because you're about to witness what happens when someone underestimates a woman who's been playing the long game her entire life. Picture this. You're sitting in your own living room, the same house where you raised your kids, where you built memories for over 30 years. Then your own flesh and blood looks you dead in the eye and calls you trash. Not just any trash, but uneducated trash who doesn't deserve to breathe the same air as his precious wife. Now imagine that same son, the boy you carried for 9 months and sacrificed everything for, pointing his finger at the door and screaming at you to get out like you're some kind of pest. Most people would crumble. Most people would beg and cry and try to explain themselves. But what they didn't know, what nobody in that room had any clue about, was that the woman they just threw out like garbage had just inherited $2 million. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't getting mad. It's getting even. My name is Eleanor Whitman, and at 73 years old, I thought I'd seen every kind of cruelty this world had to offer. I was wrong. The worst betrayal of my life came wearing my son's face and speaking with my daughter-in-law's poisoned tongue. But here's the thing about underestimating people. Sometimes it comes back to bite you so hard, you'll spend the rest of your life wishing you'd kept your mouth shut. It was Tuesday, September 15th, 2023, around 2:30 in the afternoon when my world came crashing down. I remember the exact time because I'd been watching my stories on TV, and Judge Judy was just starting when I heard Garrett's BMW pull into the driveway. My son rarely visited during weekdays, so I figured maybe he wanted to grab lunch or just spend some time with his old mom. I should have known something was wrong the minute they walked through my front door. Garrett looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his car keys and avoiding eye contact. His wife Magnolia strutted in behind him like she owned the place, wearing one of those expensive designer outfits that probably cost more than most people make in a month. Her blonde hair was pulled back, so tight it made her look mean, which honestly wasn't much of a stretch. "Mom," Garrett said, not even bothering to give me a hug hello. "We need to talk." I muted the TV and patted the cushion next to me on my old floral couch. "Of course, sweetheart. Sit down. Can I get you two some sweet tea?" Magnolia made this disgusted face like I'd offered her poison. "No thanks, Eleanor. We won't be staying long." The way she said my name, like it tasted bad in her mouth, should have been my first warning. Magnolia had never been warm toward me, but she'd always been polite enough. Today felt different. Today felt dangerous. Garrett remained standing, which made me nervous. In 35 years of being his mother, he only stood during serious conversations, like when he told me he was dropping out of college or when he announced he was marrying Magnolia after knowing her for only 6 months. "Mom, we've been talking," Garrett began, his voice shaking slightly, "and we think it's time for you to consider some changes." "What kind of changes, honey?" Magnolia stepped forward, and I swear I could feel the temperature in the room drop 10 degrees. "Changes to your living situation, Eleanor. This house is way too big for one person, and honestly, it's becoming an embarrassment." I blinked at her, not understanding. Embarrassment. "Look around." Magnolia gestured at my living room like she was pointing out a crime scene. "Everything in here is from the 1990s. The wallpaper, the furniture, those awful curtains. When we bring friends over, they think we can't afford to take care of our own family." The words hit me like a slap. I'd decorated this house with love, choosing every piece of furniture carefully, saving up for months to buy things that would last. Sure, it wasn't fancy, but it was clean and comfortable and filled with memories. "Magnolia," I said carefully, "this is my home. I've lived here for 32 years. "That's exactly the problem," she snapped back. "You're stuck in the past, Eleanor. Garrett and I have been looking at some really nice assisted living facilities. Places where you'd have people your own age to talk to, activities to keep you busy, Medical care right there if you need it. My heart started beating faster. I don't need medical care. I'm perfectly fine living on my own. Garrett finally spoke up, but he still wouldn't look at me. Mom, you're 73. What if something happens? What if you fall down the stairs or have a medical emergency and nobody's around to help? I have my neighbors. I have my phone. I have you. That's another thing, Magnolia interrupted. We can't be expected to drop everything every time you need something. Garrett has a demanding job, and I have my own responsibilities. We're not getting any younger either, you know. I stared at my son, waiting for him to defend me, to tell his wife that she was being ridiculous. Instead, he nodded along like a puppet. How much would this assisted living place cost? I asked, though I was pretty sure I already knew the answer. Don't worry about the money, Garrett said quickly. We'll handle all that. With what money, exactly? You two are already stretched thin with your mortgage and car payments. Magnolia's face turned red. That's none of your business, Eleanor. It is my business if you're planning to use my money to pay for it. The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically see the wheels turning in Magnolia's head as she realized I wasn't going to be as easy to manipulate as they'd hoped. Mom, Garrett said, his voice taking on that whiny tone he'd used as a child when he wasn't getting his way. We're trying to help you here. We're thinking about your future, your safety, your happiness. My happiness? I laughed, though the sound held no joy. You think shipping me off to some old folks' home is going to make me happy? It's not an old folks' home, Magnolia snapped. It's a luxury senior community with golf courses and swimming pools and gourmet dining. People pay good money to live in places like that. Then maybe you two should move there instead. And then Magnolia lost it completely. Her mask of fake concern slipped, and I saw the real woman underneath. The woman who'd been eyeing my house, my furniture, my life like it was all just stuff she could rearrange to suit her needs. Listen here, you stubborn old woman, Magnolia hissed, stepping closer to my chair. This isn't a discussion. This isn't us asking for your permission. We've already put a deposit down on a room at Sunset Manor, and we've contacted a realtor about putting this house on the market. The words hit me like a physical blow. You did what? We're doing what's best for everyone, Garrett said, but his voice cracked like he didn't even believe it himself. The house needs too much work, Mom. The roof is leaking, the kitchen appliances are ancient, and the whole place smells like old lady perfume. I felt tears starting to burn behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not in front of these two. Not when they were already treating me like I was weak and helpless. This is my house, I said quietly. You can't just sell it without my permission. Magnolia's laughter was the cruelest sound I'd ever heard. Actually, we can. Garrett is your only child and your next of kin. If we can prove that you're not mentally competent to make decisions about your own welfare, we can get power of attorney and do whatever we think is best. The threat hung in the air like smoke. They were talking about having me declared mentally incompetent so they could steal my house and everything I'd worked for my entire life. You wouldn't dare, I whispered. Try us, Magnolia shot back. We've already talked to a lawyer. All we need is a doctor to say you're suffering from age-related cognitive decline, and boom, everything becomes our responsibility to manage. I looked at my son, this man I'd raised from a baby, hoping to see some trace of the loving boy he used to be. Instead, I saw a stranger. A weak, greedy stranger who was willing to destroy his own mother to make his wife happy. Garrett, I said, my voice barely audible. How can you let her talk to me like this? For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Shame, maybe, or regret. But then Magnolia grabbed his arm, and the moment passed. Don't try to guilt-trip him, Eleanor, she said. Garrett knows I'm right. You're becoming a burden, and frankly, we're tired of pretending otherwise. You call us constantly with stupid problems that you could solve yourself if you weren't so lazy. You expect us to include you in everything we do, like we don't have our own lives. And this house. She gestured around my living room again. It's an embarrassment. Our friends drive by and see this dump and think we don't care about our own family. Each word was designed to cut deep, and they were working. I felt smaller and smaller with every sentence, like I was shrinking into my own chair. I never asked you for anything I couldn't handle myself, I said weakly. Really? Magnolia pulled out her phone and started scrolling. Let's see. Last month you called Garrett because your garbage disposal was making a weird noise. The month before that, you needed help moving your dresser because you wanted to rearrange your bedroom. Oh, and remember when you called us at 9:30 at night because you thought you heard someone breaking into your shed, and it turned out to be a raccoon. She was right about the phone calls, but she was making them sound so much worse than they were. I didn't call constantly. Maybe once or twice a month when I genuinely needed help with something I couldn't do alone. Those were legitimate problems, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. They were the problems of someone who can't take care of herself anymore. Magnolia replied coldly. Face facts, Eleanor. You're old, you're alone, and you're becoming more helpless every day. We're offering you a solution that benefits everyone. Benefits everyone or benefits you too? Magnolia's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm not stupid, despite what you seem to think. If I move to assisted living and you sell my house, where does that money go? Into my account or into yours? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. The money would go toward your care, Garrett said finally, but he couldn't meet my eyes. All of it. Mom, assisted living is expensive. Really expensive. And if you need extra care as you get older, those costs add up fast. So, you'd use my house money to pay for the nursing home you're forcing me into? It's not a nursing home, Magnolia snapped. And we're not forcing you into anything. We're trying to help you make smart decisions before you lose the ability to make any decisions at all. Something inside me finally snapped. These two people, sitting in my living room, in the house I'd bought with my own money and filled with my own memories, were talking about me like I was already dead. Like I was just some obstacle standing between them and my assets. Get out, I said quietly. Magnolia looked confused. Excuse me? I said get out of my house. Eleanor, be reasonable. Garrett started, but I cut him off. Be reasonable? I stood up from my chair, feeling anger course through my veins like electricity. You two come into my home, insult everything I've built, threaten to have me declared mentally incompetent, and then tell me to be reasonable? Mom, you're being dramatic, Garrett said, but I could see panic starting to creep into his expression. Dramatic? You want to see dramatic? I walked to my front door and threw it open. Get out of my house. Both of you. Right now. Magnolia stood up slowly, her face twisted with rage. You're making a huge mistake, Eleanor. We're trying to help you, and you're too proud and too stupid to see it. The only mistake I made was thinking my son would never betray me like this. But apparently I was wrong about a lot of things. And then Magnolia showed her true colors. The mask of fake concern disappeared completely, replaced by pure venom. You know what your problem is, Eleanor, she said, stepping close enough that I could smell her expensive perfume. You're nothing but uneducated trash who got lucky enough to marry a man with a steady job. You've never accomplished anything on your own, never built anything, never contributed anything meaningful to this world. You're just a sad old woman clinging to a house that's falling apart because it's the only thing that makes you feel important. The words hit me like physical blows. Each phrase was carefully chosen to destroy what little self-worth I had left. And you know what else? Magnolia continued, her voice rising. Garrett agrees with me. He's just too nice to say it to your face. But we talk about you, Eleanor. We talk about how pathetic you are, how you have no friends, no hobbies, no life outside of bothering us. You're a burden, pure and simple. I looked at my son, waiting for him to defend me, to tell his wife she'd gone too far. Instead, he looked at the floor and said nothing. Garrett, I whispered, is that really what you think of me? When he finally looked up, his eyes were cold. Stranger's eyes. Mom, you need to face reality. You're not the person you used to be. You're getting older, you're getting more difficult, and frankly, Magnolia and I have our own lives to worry about. We can't keep dropping everything to take care of you. The betrayal was complete. My own son, the boy I'd rocked to sleep and nursed through fevers and cheered for at Little League games, was looking at me like I was nothing more than an inconvenience. So that's it? I asked. After everything I've done for you, after all the sacrifices I made raising you alone after your father died, this is how you repay me? You didn't sacrifice anything, Mom, Garrett said, his voice getting harder. Dad left us plenty of money when he died. You never had to work, never had to struggle, never had to worry about paying bills. You've lived an easy life, and now you're acting like you're some kind of hero for doing the bare minimum. The words were like daggers. My husband had worked 2 jobs to provide for our family, and yes, his life insurance had helped after he passed. But that didn't mean raising a child alone had been easy. It didn't mean the lonely nights and the worry and the constant fear that I was messing everything up didn't matter. I did my best, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Your best wasn't good enough, Magnolia said with satisfaction. Look how he turned out. No college degree, bouncing from job to job, always struggling to make ends meet. If you'd been a better mother, maybe he would have amounted to something. The cruelty of it took my breath away. She was blaming me for Garrett's life choices, using my love for him as a weapon against me. I want both of you out of my house right now, I said, my voice stronger. Fine, Magnolia said, grabbing her purse. But don't come crying to us when you fall down those stairs and lie there for 3 days before someone finds you. Don't call us when your car breaks down or your electricity goes out or you can't figure out how to work your own television. She headed toward the door, then turned back for one final blow. And when you're sitting in this dump all alone, wondering why your son never visits anymore, remember this conversation. Remember that we tried to help you, and you threw it back in our faces because you're too stubborn and too stupid to accept reality. Garrett followed her toward the door, but he paused at the threshold. Mom, he said, not looking at me. When you change your mind about the assisted living place, give us a call. But don't wait too long. We're not going to keep the deposit on hold forever. Get out, I said again. Both of you. Get out, you pests, and don't come back. Garrett's face hardened. If that's how you want it, Mom. But don't expect us to come running the next time you need something. You're on your own now. They walked out of my house and out of my life, leaving me standing in my doorway watching their BMW disappear down the street. I closed the door, locked it, and for the first time in decades, I was completely alone. I should have cried. I should have collapsed on my couch and sobbed for the son I'd lost and the daughter-in-law who'd shown her true colors. Instead, I walked to my kitchen, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat down at my table to think. They thought they knew everything about me. They thought I was just some helpless old woman with nothing but an old house and faded memories. They had no idea that just 3 days earlier, on September 12th, I'd received a phone call that changed everything. Mrs. Whitman? This is Patricia Morrison from the law firm of Morrison, Bradley and Associates. I'm calling about your Aunt Lucinda's estate. Aunt Lucinda had been my father's sister, a woman I'd barely spoken to in 20 years. She'd never married, never had children, and had spent her life traveling the world and investing in real estate. I knew she'd done well for herself, but I had no idea just how well until Patricia Morrison explained the terms of her will. Your aunt left you her entire estate, Mrs. Whitman. After taxes and legal fees, you're looking at approximately $2 million. $2 million. The number had seemed impossible when I first heard it. I'd asked Patricia to repeat it 3 times before it sank in. Aunt Lucinda had left me everything. Her house in California, her stock portfolio, her savings accounts, everything. The estate should be settled within the next few weeks, Patricia had explained. We'll need you to sign some paperwork and make some decisions about liquidating assets, but the process should be fairly straightforward. I hadn't told anyone about the inheritance. Not Garrett, not my neighbors, not even my best friend Betty, who lived 3 houses down. Something had told me to keep it quiet until everything was finalized. Now I was grateful for that instinct. As I sat in my kitchen, sipping my coffee and replaying the awful things Magnolia and Garrett had said to me, I started to smile. They thought they'd broken me. They thought they'd reduced me to nothing but a burden and an embarrassment. They had no idea they'd just made the biggest mistake of their lives. I picked up my phone and called Patricia Morrison. Patricia? It's Eleanor Whitman. I'm ready to sign those papers. The next morning, September 16th, I drove to Patricia's office and signed document after document, officially becoming a millionaire. The feeling was surreal. One day I was supposedly uneducated trash. The next day I had enough money to buy and sell people like Magnolia 10 times over. What are your plans for the inheritance, Mrs. Whitman? Patricia asked as we finished up the paperwork. I'm thinking about buying a beach house, I said. Somewhere warm where I can relax and enjoy my retirement. That sounds wonderful. Have you considered Florida? The real estate market there has some excellent opportunities for someone in your position. Florida. The idea appealed to me immediately. Warm weather, beautiful beaches, and most importantly, 2,000 miles away from my ungrateful son and his poison wife. That afternoon, I called a real estate agent in Naples, Florida, named Jennifer Walsh. She was enthusiastic and knowledgeable, and when I explained that I was looking for a house near the beach with a budget of up to $1 million, her excitement was obvious. Mrs. Whitman, I have several properties that would be perfect for you, Jennifer said. Would you be interested in a virtual tour? I can show you homes via video call, and if you find something you like, we can arrange an in-person visit. Over the next 3 days, Jennifer showed me 12 different houses via video calls. Some were too big, some too small, some too expensive. But on September 19th, she showed me a house that took my breath away. It was a beautiful 3-bedroom home just 2 blocks from the beach, with white stucco walls, a red tile roof, and a front yard full of palm trees and tropical flowers. The house had a pool, a 2-car garage, and a view of the Gulf of Mexico from the master bedroom window. The interior was modern and bright, with tile floors and large windows that let in tons of natural light. This property is listed at $850,000, Jennifer explained as she gave me the virtual tour. It's been on the market for 3 weeks, but the sellers are motivated. I think we could get it for $800,000, maybe less. $800,000. It was a lot of money, but I had $2 million to work with, and this house was everything I'd ever dreamed of. I could picture myself reading books by the pool, walking on the beach every morning, and finally living the peaceful retirement I'd always wanted. I want to make an offer, I told Jennifer. Full asking price, cash deal, no contingencies. Are you sure, Mrs. Whitman? We could probably negotiate a lower price. I'm sure. I want this house, and I want the sellers to know I'm serious. 3 days later, my offer was accepted. I would own a beautiful beach house in Florida, far away from the son who'd called me uneducated trash and the daughter-in-law who'd tried to steal my home. But before I could enjoy my new life, I had some unfinished business to take care of. I spent the next 2 weeks methodically planning my departure and my revenge. I contacted a moving company to pack up my belongings and ship them to Florida. I hired a cleaning service to make sure the house was spotless. I arranged for the utilities to be transferred to my name at the new address. Most importantly, I hired a private investigator named Rex Thornton to do some digging into Garrett and Magnolia's finances. Rex was a retired police detective who specialized in background checks and financial investigations, and he came highly recommended by Patricia Morrison. I need to know everything, I told Rex during our first meeting at his office on September 23rd. Their debts, their assets, their spending habits, everything. Money is no object. Rex was a man in his early 60s with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen everything. He listened to my story without judgment, taking notes and asking clarifying questions. Mrs. Whitman, what you're describing sounds like elder abuse, he said when I finished explaining about the confrontation. That's a serious crime, and if your son and daughter-in-law were planning to have you declared mentally incompetent to steal your assets, that's fraud. I know, but I need proof before I can do anything about it. Give me 2 weeks, Rex said. I'll find out everything there is to know about these people. True to his word, Rex called me on October 6th with his preliminary report. What he found exceeded even my worst suspicions. Mrs. Whitman, your son and daughter-in-law are in serious financial trouble, Rex said. They owe $52,000 in credit card debt across 7 different cards. They're 4 months behind on their mortgage payments, and they've got a second mortgage on their house that they took out 8 months ago. A second mortgage? What did they need that money for? Near as I can tell, they used it to invest in some kind of cryptocurrency trading scheme that promised huge returns. They lost everything. The whole $75,000. The pieces started falling into place. Garrett and Magnolia weren't trying to help me. They were trying to save themselves. They needed my house to pay off their debts and avoid foreclosure. There's more, Rex continued. I did some digging into Magnolia's background. Her real name is Margaret Louise Crawford, and she's got a history of targeting older men with assets. She's done this before? 3 times that I can prove. Her first husband was a 70-year-old retired engineer from Phoenix named Walter Caldwell. They were married for 2 years before he died in what was ruled an accidental fall down the stairs. Left her everything, about $400,000. My blood ran cold. An accidental fall? That's what the police report says. But here's the interesting part. Margaret Crawford took out a life insurance policy on Walter just 6 months before he died. A big one. $500,000. And her other husbands? Husband number 2 was a 68-year-old rancher from New Mexico named Robert Sterling. Married for 18 months before he died of what was ruled a heart attack. Again, Margaret had taken out a substantial life insurance policy on him just months before his death. I felt sick to my stomach. My son hadn't just married a gold digger. He'd married a serial killer. What about husband number 3? That one's different. His name was Charles Brennan, a retired banker from California. 72 years old, wealthy, lived alone. Margaret married him, but he got suspicious when she started asking about his will and trying to get him to sign financial documents. He hired his own private investigator, discovered her real identity, and divorced her before she could kill him. But not before she'd managed to steal $60,000 from his bank accounts. So, she's done this at least 3 times. At least. I'm still digging, but I suspect there are more victims. The pattern is always the same. She targets older men with money, marries them quickly, takes out life insurance policies, and then they die under suspicious circumstances. I thanked Rex for his work and asked him to keep digging. If Margaret Louise Crawford, also known as Magnolia Whitman, was a serial killer, I needed to know everything about her crimes before I made my next move. But first, I needed to deal with the immediate threat to my own safety. If Magnolia had killed 3 husbands for money, what would she do to a mother-in-law who stood between her and a $2 million inheritance? I called Patricia Morrison and explained the situation. Patricia, I need to change my will immediately, I said. I want to make sure that if anything happens to me, Garrett doesn't inherit a penny. Of course, Mrs. Whitman. What did you have in mind? I want to leave everything to charity. Animal shelters, cancer research, children's hospitals, whatever. Just make sure my son and his wife never see a dime of my money. Patricia drafted a new will that left my entire estate to various charities, with a small provision for my neighbor Betty to take care of my cat if I died before him. I signed it on October 8th, and Patricia assured me that it was ironclad. Even if someone tried to challenge this will on the grounds of mental incompetency, we have extensive documentation of your mental state from the inheritance proceedings, she explained. There's no way they could successfully contest it. With my estate protected, I turned my attention to gathering evidence against Garrett and Magnolia. I installed security cameras around my house, started recording all phone calls, and began documenting every interaction I had with them. I didn't have to wait long. On October 10th, Garrett called me for the first time since the confrontation. Mom, his voice was shaky and desperate. Mom, I know you're angry, but we need to talk. I'm sorry, I said calmly, making sure my recording app was running. Who is this? Mom, it's me. It's Garrett, your son. Oh, I don't think so. My son called me uneducated trash and threw me out of my own house. I don't have a son anymore. Mom, please. I'm calling because we're in trouble. Real trouble. We might lose our house. That sounds like a personal problem, Garrett. Mom, the bank is threatening to foreclose. We're behind on our mortgage payments, and they're saying we have 30 days to catch up, or they'll start the foreclosure process. I let the silence stretch out, savoring his desperation. How much do you owe? I asked finally. $18,000 in back payments, plus penalties and fees. Mom, I know we said some harsh things, but we're family. You can't let us lose our house. Actually, I can. You made it very clear that you don't consider me family anymore. Mom, please. Magnolia is beside herself. She's crying every day, worried about what's going to happen to us. Maybe she should have thought about that before she called me uneducated trash. We didn't mean those things, Mom. We were just worried about you, and we handled it badly. But you can't destroy our lives over one argument. One argument. He was still trying to minimize what they'd done to me. Garrett, you and your wife spent an hour in my living room telling me I was worthless, that I was a burden, that I was too stupid to live on my own. You threatened to have me declared mentally incompetent so you could steal my house. That wasn't an argument. That was abuse. We were just trying to help you. No, you were trying to help yourselves. But here's the thing, Garrett. I know about your debts. I know about your cryptocurrency investments. I know about your wife's real name and her history of marrying men for their money. The silence on the other end of the line told me everything I needed to know. Mom, I don't know what you think you know, but I know that Margaret Louise Crawford has been married 3 times before, and all 3 of her previous husbands died under suspicious circumstances. I know she took out life insurance policies on them just months before they died. I know she's a con artist and probably a murderer. That's impossible. Magnolia would never. Wake up, Garrett. Your wife is a professional criminal who targeted you because of your family's money. She's been planning to kill me and inherit my estate through you. Mom, you're scaring me. This doesn't sound like you. Maybe we should take you to see a doctor. Don't you dare, I interrupted. Don't you dare try to gaslight me about my mental state. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. I hung up the phone and immediately called Rex Thornton. Rex, I need you to find out everything you can about Margaret Louise Crawford's current activities. I think she might be planning something, and I need to be prepared. I'm already on it, Mrs. Whitman. I've been monitoring her social media accounts and her financial transactions. She's been researching poisons that can mimic heart attacks and shopping for life insurance policies. The confirmation of my worst fears sent chills down my spine. Magnolia wasn't just a gold digger. She was actively planning my murder. What kind of poisons? Digitalis, potassium chloride, things that would be hard to detect in an autopsy unless the coroner knew specifically what to look for. She's also been researching your medical history and your daily routines. How is she getting my medical information? She listed herself as your emergency contact at her doctor's office and claimed to be concerned about your mental state. The office gave her information about your recent visits and medication history. The violation felt even worse than the physical threats. Magnolia had been systematically gathering information to use against me, building a case for my incompetency while simultaneously planning my death. Rex, I want to set a trap. I want to catch her in the act and make sure she goes to prison for the rest of her life. Mrs. Whitman, that's extremely dangerous. If she's planning to kill you, we should go to the police right now. With what evidence? Everything we have is circumstantial. We need proof of her criminal intent, and the only way to get that is to let her make a move. Rex was quiet for a long moment. What did you have in mind? I explained my plan. It was risky, but it was the only way to ensure that Magnolia would be caught red-handed and sent to prison for her crimes. I'll need your help to pull this off, I told Rex. And we'll need to involve the police, but only at the right moment. This is either brilliant or suicidal, Mrs. Whitman. After what they've put me through, I'm willing to take that chance. On October 12th, I put my plan into motion. I called Garrett and left a voicemail that was designed to bait Magnolia into action. Garrett, it's your mother. I've been thinking about our conversation, and I realize I may have overreacted. I'm willing to discuss the assisted living situation, but first, I need to show you something important. I've discovered some documents in your father's papers that I think you should see. They involve your inheritance and some financial arrangements you don't know about. Can you and Magnolia come over for dinner tomorrow night? 7 o'clock. We need to talk about your future and mine. The message was carefully crafted to suggest that I had valuable financial information that could benefit them, while also implying that I was reconsidering my position on the assisted living facility. It was exactly the kind of bait that would be irresistible to someone like Magnolia. Garrett called me back within an hour. Mom, thank you for calling. Magnolia and I would love to come to dinner tomorrow night. Good. I'll make your favorite pot roast. Mom, about those documents you mentioned. We'll discuss everything tomorrow, Garrett. I think you'll be very interested in what I've found. I spent October 13th preparing for what I hoped would be the last time I'd ever have to see Garrett and Magnolia. Rex had arranged for police surveillance around my house, and I was wearing a recording device that would capture everything that happened. At exactly 7 o'clock, Garrett and Magnolia arrived at my front door. They were both dressed nicely, as if this were a special occasion, and Magnolia was carrying a bottle of wine and a small gift bag. Eleanor, thank you so much for inviting us, Magnolia said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I brought you some chamomile tea. I know how much you enjoy a cup before bed. The tea felt like a threat, given what Rex had discovered about her research into untraceable poisons. But I smiled and accepted the gift graciously. How thoughtful, dear. Come in, dinner's almost ready. We sat down to pot roast, mashed potatoes, and green beans just like we had dozens of times before. But everything felt different now. Every word was loaded with hidden meaning. Every gesture was part of a larger game. Mom, you mentioned some documents, Garrett said as we ate. Something about Dad's papers? Yes, I found some interesting things while I was cleaning out the attic. I lied smoothly. Insurance policies, investment accounts, things I'd forgotten about. I think they could significantly impact your inheritance. Magnolia's eyes lit up with greed. What kind of investment accounts? Well, it turns out your father was much more financially savvy than I gave him credit for. He set up several trusts and offshore accounts that I never knew about. The lawyers are still calculating the exact value, but it could be substantial. I watched Magnolia's face as she processed this information. I could practically see her recalculating her plans, weighing the potential benefit of keeping me alive long enough to access these fictional accounts against the risk of waiting too long. "That's wonderful news, Mom," Garrett said. "Does this mean you might not need to sell the house after all?" "Actually, it means quite the opposite," I said. "With these additional assets, I'm thinking of making some major changes. Moving somewhere warmer, maybe buying a place near the beach." "But Mom, what about your care as you get older?" Magnolia asked. "Wouldn't it make more sense to move into a facility where you'd have medical support?" "I've been thinking about that too. But with these new financial resources, I could afford to hire private nurses, housekeepers, whatever I need to stay independent." The disappointment on Magnolia's face was obvious. If I could afford private care, there would be no need for them to step in and manage my affairs. "Could we see these documents?" Magnolia asked. "I mean, just to help you understand what you're dealing with? Financial planning can be so complicated." "Of course. They're in my safe upstairs. But first, let's finish dinner. And I want to apologize for the things I said during our last conversation. I was hurt and angry, and I may have overreacted." "We understand, Mom," Garrett said. "We said some hurtful things too. We were just worried about you." After dinner, I led them upstairs to my bedroom, where I had prepared a collection of fake documents that Rex had helped me create. Bank statements, insurance policies, trust agreements, all designed to look legitimate while being completely fictional. "Here they are," I said, opening my safe and pulling out a manila folder. "Your father was apparently much more secretive about his finances than I realize." Magnolia practically grabbed the folder from my hands, her eyes scanning the documents with obvious excitement. Garrett looked over her shoulder, and I could see both of them calculating numbers in their heads. "Mom, this is incredible," Garrett said. "Do you realize what this means?" "It means I'll be financially comfortable for the rest of my life," I said. "And it means you two don't need to worry about taking care of me anymore." That was exactly the wrong thing to say, from Magnolia's perspective. If I didn't need their care, they'd have no way to gain control of my assets. "Eleanor, even with all this money, you'll still need family support," Magnolia said carefully. "Financial resources can't replace human connection and care." "You're absolutely right," I agreed. "That's why I've decided to make some changes to my will." Both Garrett and Magnolia froze. "What kind of changes?" Magnolia asked, her voice tight. "Well, with these additional assets, I want to make sure everything is distributed properly. I'm thinking of setting up a charitable foundation, maybe leaving the bulk of the estate to causes I care about." Magnolia's mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw pure rage flash across her face before she composed herself. "That's very generous of you, Eleanor. But shouldn't you leave something for Garrett? He is your only child." "Oh, I'll leave him something, of course. But with all this money, I think it's important to give back to the community. Don't you agree?" The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Magnolia was realizing that her carefully laid plans were falling apart, and I could see her trying to figure out how to salvage the situation. "Eleanor, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" Magnolia asked. "Maybe we could step into the hallway?" "Of course, dear." We left Garrett studying the fake documents and walked into the hallway outside my bedroom. Magnolia's friendly demeanor disappeared immediately. "Listen to me very carefully, you old fool," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "I know exactly what you're trying to do, and it's not going to work. I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean. Don't play dumb with me. You think you're so clever, but I've been playing this game a lot longer than you have. I know all about your little inheritance, and I know you're trying to cut us out." So she knew about Aunt Lucinda's money. Interesting. "I still don't know what you're talking about, Magnolia." "My name isn't Magnolia, you stupid woman. It's Margaret, and I've killed 3 men who try to play games with me. Do you really think I'll hesitate to add one more name to that list? There it was. A confession of murder, recorded on the device I was wearing. You're scaring me, Magnolia, I said, making my voice shake. I don't understand why you're saying these things. Because you need to understand the situation you're in. You're going to change your will back to leave everything to Garrett, or you're going to have a very unfortunate accident. Maybe a fall down the stairs, like my first husband. Maybe a heart attack, like my second husband. These things happen to elderly people all the time. Please don't hurt me, I whispered. I'll do whatever you want. That's better. Now we're going to go back in there, and you're going to tell Garrett that you've changed your mind about the charitable foundation. You're going to leave everything to him in your will, and you're going to sign the papers to make him your power of attorney. Tonight. But I don't have those papers here. I brought them, Magnolia said with a cold smile. They're in my purse downstairs. I came prepared for this conversation. Of course she had. Margaret Louise Crawford always came prepared. We went back into the bedroom, where Garrett was still looking at the fake financial documents. Garrett, honey, I said, my voice shaking with what Magnolia thought was fear but was actually excitement. I've been thinking about what you said about my care, and I think you're right. Maybe I do need more support than I realize. Really, Mom? Yes. And I want to make sure you're taken care of too. I think we should go ahead with the power of attorney arrangement we discussed. Garrett looked confused. We never discussed that, Mom. Magnolia shot him a sharp look. Yes, we did, honey. Remember? We talked about how important it would be for you to be able to help your mother manage her affairs as she gets older. I want to do that tonight, I continued. Magnolia, didn't you say you had some papers with you? Yes, I do. They're downstairs in my purse. Let me go get them. As soon as Magnolia left the room, I turned to Garrett. Garrett, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Your wife is not who you think she is. Her real name is Margaret Louise Crawford, and she's killed 3 men for their money. She's planning to kill me too. Garrett stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Mom, what are you talking about? I hired a private investigator. I have proof of everything. She's been married 3 times before, and all 3 of her husbands died under suspicious circumstances. She took out life insurance policies on them and then murdered them. That's impossible. Magnolia would never. She just threatened to kill me in the hallway, Garrett. She said she'd make it look like an accident, just like she did with her other husbands. Mom, I think you need to see a doctor. This paranoia isn't normal. Before I could respond, Magnolia returned with a folder full of legal documents. Here we are, she said cheerfully. Power of attorney forms, updated will, everything we need to make sure Eleanor is properly taken care of. She spread the papers out on my dresser, and I could see that they were real legal documents, not the fake ones Rex and I had prepared. She really had come prepared to steal my assets tonight. All you need to do is sign here, Eleanor, Magnolia said, pointing to signature lines that had already been marked with sticky notes. And here, and here. I picked up a pen and pretended to read the documents, but what I was really doing was stalling for time. Rex had promised that police backup would be in position by 8:30, and it was only 8:15. This is a lot to process, I said. Maybe I should have my lawyer look at these first. Magnolia's friendly expression hardened. There's no need for that, Eleanor. These are standard documents. Just sign them. I'm not comfortable signing legal papers without understanding them completely. Sign them now, Magnolia said, her voice taking on an edge of menace. Or we'll have to discuss other options. Garrett looked back and forth between us, finally beginning to sense that something was very wrong. Magnolia, maybe we should slow down, he said. If Mom wants her lawyer to review the papers. Shut up, Garrett, Magnolia snapped. Your mother is going to sign these papers right now, or she's going to have an accident. An accident? Garrett's voice was shaky. What kind of accident? The kind that happens to elderly people who don't take care of themselves properly, Magnolia said, pulling a small vial from her purse. Heart attacks, for instance. Very common in women your mother's age. I saw Garrett's face go pale as he finally understood what was happening. Magnolia, what is that? Insurance, she said simply. Something to help Eleanor make the right decision. You're talking about poisoning my mother. I'm talking about doing what needs to be done. Just like I did with Walter and Robert and Charles. Sometimes people need a little help making their final exit. Garrett stared at his wife in horror. You killed those men? Of course I did. They were in my way, just like your mother is in my way now. But you don't need to worry about any of that, darling. Once Eleanor is gone, we'll inherit everything, and we'll never have to worry about money again. You're insane, Garrett whispered. I'm practical, Magnolia corrected. Now, Eleanor, are you going to sign those papers, or am I going to have to use this? She held up the vial, and I could see a clear liquid sloshing inside. I'll sign, I said quickly. Please don't hurt me. That's better. Now sit down at the dresser and sign every paper where I've marked. I moved to the dresser and picked up the pen, but instead of signing, I turned to face her. Actually, Margaret, I have a better idea. Her eyes widened in surprise at the use of her real name. How do I know your real name? How do I know about Walter Caldwell and Robert Sterling and Charles Brennan? How do I know about the life insurance policies and the poisoning and all the other victims you've killed over the years? Magnolia's face went white. That's impossible. Nothing's impossible when you have $2 million to spend on private investigators and legal fees, I said. Did you really think I'd let you walk into my house and threaten to murder me without doing my homework first? You're bluffing. Am I? Then you won't mind if I tell you about the digitalis you've been researching, or the potassium chloride you ordered online last week, or the life insurance policy you tried to take out on me using forged medical information. Magnolia's hand tightened around the vial. You can't prove any of that. Actually, I can. And I am. Right on cue, I heard car doors slamming outside and footsteps on my front porch. What was that? Garrett asked. That, I said with satisfaction, is the police. The front door burst open, and I heard Rex Thornton's voice shouting, Police! Eleanor, where are you? Upstairs, I called back. Magnolia looked around wildly, realizing she was trapped. You set me up, just like you set up 3 innocent men who made the mistake of trusting you. Police officers appeared in my bedroom doorway, led by Rex and a detective named Lieutenant Sarah Martinez. Mrs. Whitman, are you all right? Lieutenant Martinez asked.
I've fine.
But you'll want to arrest Margaret Louise Crawford for threatening to murder me, and for the murders of Walter Caldwell, Robert Sterling, and Charles Brennan. Magnolia tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The officers quickly surrounded her and took the vial from her hand. Margaret Louise Crawford, Lieutenant Martinez said, You're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, and suspicion of murder in connection with the deaths of 3 men in Arizona, New Mexico, and California. As they read Magnolia her rights and led her away in handcuffs, she turned back to look at me with pure hatred in her eyes. This isn't over, you old bitch, she snarled. Actually it is, I replied calmly. Enjoy prison, Margaret. I hear they don't treat serial killers very well in there. Garrett stood in my bedroom, staring at the handcuffs around his wife's wrists as she was led away. Mom, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I had no idea. I swear to you, I had no idea what she was. I know you didn't, Garrett. You were a victim too. But the things we said to you, the way we treated you. You were being manipulated by a professional con artist and murderer. She knew exactly how to push your buttons and make you do what she wanted. Garrett sank down onto my bed, his head in his hands. I called you uneducated trash. I threw you out of your own house. I threatened to have you declared mentally incompetent. How can you ever forgive me? I sat down next to my son and put my arm around his shoulders. Because you're my son and I love you. Because I know the difference between someone who's evil and someone who's been fooled by evil. Because Margaret Louise Crawford is very good at what she does, and you're not the first person she's manipulated. I feel so stupid. All those times she insisted we ask you for money, all those conversations about your house and your finances. She was planning this from the beginning, wasn't she? From the day she met you, probably. Rex found evidence that she'd been researching our family for months before you two even started dating. Garrett looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Can you ever trust me again? That's going to take time, Garrett. A lot of time. What you said and did hurt me deeply, even if you were being manipulated. But the fact that you're asking that question tells me there's hope. If you're enjoying this incredible story of justice and redemption, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss our other amazing true stories about women who refuse to be victims. Over the next few months, the full extent of Margaret Louise Crawford's crimes became clear. The FBI investigation revealed that she had been operating under multiple identities for over 15 years, and they suspected her of at least 6 murders across 4 different states. The evidence against her was overwhelming. In addition to the recorded confession I had captured, investigators found detailed plans for my murder hidden in her computer, along with research into various untraceable poisons and methods for forging medical documents. They also found evidence linking her to the deaths of her 3 previous husbands, including emails discussing life insurance payouts and internet searches for ways to cause heart attacks and falls that would appear accidental. On December 15, 2023, Margaret Louise Crawford pled guilty to attempted murder in my case and accepted a plea deal that would allow her to avoid the death penalty in exchange for providing information about her other victims. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Garrett was cleared of any criminal wrongdoing, as investigators determined that he had been genuinely unaware of his wife's criminal background and murderous intentions. But the psychological damage was severe. Mom, I keep thinking about all the times she suggested we ask you for money, he told me during one of our conversations in January 2024. All the times she talked about how difficult you were becoming, how we needed to take control of your finances for your own good. I thought she was being caring and responsible, but she was really just setting up the con. She's a professional, Garrett. She's been doing this for years, and she's very good at manipulation. But I should have seen through it. I should have protected you instead of attacking you. We were sitting in my new house in Naples, Florida, where I had moved in November 2023. The house was everything I had dreamed of and more, with beautiful views of the Gulf of Mexico and a peaceful atmosphere that felt like a world away from the nightmare I had escaped. Garrett had driven down from Oklahoma, where he was living with his cousin while he rebuilt his life after losing his job and his house in the aftermath of the scandal. I've been going to therapy, he said, watching the waves roll in from my pool deck. Trying to understand how I let myself be manipulated so completely. What does your therapist say? That Margaret targeted my insecurities about money and success. That she knew exactly which buttons to push to make me feel like I was failing as a son and as a provider. She convinced me that taking care of you was a burden that was holding me back from achieving success. And how do you feel about that now? Like I was an idiot. Like, I threw away the most important relationship in my life for a woman who was planning to murder you and steal your money. I reached over and took his hand. You weren't an idiot, Garrett. You were a victim. The only difference between you and Margaret's previous husbands is that you're still alive. But they didn't abuse their own mothers. No, but they probably would have if Margaret had convinced them it was necessary. That's what she does. She finds people's weaknesses and exploits them. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Mom, Garrett said eventually, I want to make this right. I want to earn your forgiveness and your trust. What did you have in mind? I want to work with victim advocacy groups, help other families recognize the signs of elder abuse and financial exploitation. I want to use what happened to us to help other people avoid the same mistakes. That sounds like a good start. And I want to pay you back for the emotional damage I caused. I know I can't undo what I said or did, but I want to try to make amends. Garrett, the best way you can make amends is to become the kind of person I can be proud of again. The kind of person who would never treat his mother the way you treated me. I'm working on that every day. And he was. Over the following months, Garrett threw himself into volunteer work with elder advocacy organizations. He spoke at conferences about the warning signs of elder abuse, sharing our story as a cautionary tale about how easily families could be manipulated by predators. He also started a support group for family members of financial exploitation victims, helping other people work through the guilt and shame of being manipulated into harming their own loved ones. In March 2024, he called me with exciting news. Mom, I've been offered a job with the National Center on Elder Abuse. They want me to be a program coordinator, helping develop educational materials and outreach programs. That's wonderful, Garrett. I'm proud of you. It doesn't pay much, but it's meaningful work. And it's a chance to turn the worst experience of my life into something that can help other people. That's all anyone can ask for. By the summer of 2024, our relationship had begun to heal. Garrett visited me in Florida regularly, and we talked on the phone every week. The trust was slowly rebuilding, one conversation at a time. But the real test came in August, when I received some unexpected news from my doctor. Mrs. Whitman, I'm afraid the test results show that you have early-stage pancreatic cancer, Dr. Williams told me during what I thought was a routine checkup. It's treatable, but you're going to need surgery and chemotherapy. The diagnosis was devastating, but not because I was afraid of dying. At 74, I'd lived a full life, and I wasn't afraid of what came next. What scared me was the possibility of becoming the burden that Garrett and Margaret had accused me of being. I called Garrett that evening to tell him about the diagnosis. Mom, I'm coming down there right away, he said immediately. You shouldn't be dealing with this alone. Garrett, you don't need to. Yes, I do. You're my mother and I love you, and I'm not going to let you face cancer alone. But your job. My boss already said I can work remotely for as long as necessary. Mom, please let me take care of you. Let me be the son I should have been all along. So Garrett moved to Florida to help me through my treatment. He drove me to doctor's appointments, helped me manage the side effects of chemotherapy, and took care of the house when I was too weak to do it myself. He never once complained about the inconvenience or the expense. He never made me feel like a burden or suggested that I should consider assisted living. He was patient, caring, and devoted in a way that reminded me of the little boy I had raised. You know, I told him one day as we sat by the pool after a particularly difficult chemo session, this is exactly the kind of care I needed when you and Margaret were trying to convince me to move into a nursing home. I know, Mom, and I'm so sorry we didn't see that then. The difference is, you're helping me because you love me, not because you want something from me. I do want something from you, Garrett said quietly. What's that? I want your forgiveness. I want to prove that I'm worthy of being called your son again. I looked at my son, this man who had driven 2,000 miles to take care of me, who had put his life on hold to help me fight cancer, who had spent the last year working to become a better person. You already have my forgiveness, Garrett. You've had it for months. Really? Really? You made a terrible mistake, but you've more than made up for it. You're the son I always knew you could be. We both cried then, sitting by my pool in the Florida sunshine, finally healing from the wounds that Margaret Louise Crawford had inflicted on our family. My cancer treatment was successful. By December 2024, I was in remission, and the doctors were optimistic about my long-term prognosis. Garrett had returned to his job in Oklahoma, but he visited every month and called me every day. Our relationship was stronger than it had ever been, built on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect that we had never had before. On the one-year anniversary of Margaret's arrest, Garrett called me with news that brought our story full circle. "Mom, I just got word from the FBI. Margaret tried to escape from prison last week." "Did she succeed?" "No, she was caught before she made it off the grounds. But here's the interesting part. She was trying to get to a car that was waiting for her outside the prison fence. The driver was another woman who's suspected of running the same kind of marriage and murder scheme in Florida." "So there are others like her?" "Apparently, it's a whole network. The FBI thinks Margaret was part of a larger organization that targets elderly people for financial exploitation and murder. Your case helped them uncover the whole operation." "How many victims?" "They're still investigating, but they think there could be dozens. Maybe hundreds." "Mom, by fighting back against Margaret, you probably saved a lot of lives." I thought about all the elderly people who might have fallen victim to Margaret Louise Crawford and her associates if I hadn't fought back. All the families who might have been destroyed by these predators. "I'm glad we caught her," I said. "I'm glad she'll never hurt anyone else."
Me too.
"And Mom, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of how strong you were, how smart you were, how you refused to be a victim. I'm proud of you too, Garrett. You turned a terrible situation into something meaningful." As I write this story today, it's been 3 years since that awful day when Garrett and Margaret called me uneducated trash and tried to steal my home. 3 years since I discovered that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most can be the ones who hurt you the worst. But it's also been 3 years of healing, growth, and redemption. 3 years of rebuilding a relationship with my son that's stronger than ever. 3 years of living in paradise, surrounded by friends who care about me for who I am, not what I own. Margaret Louise Crawford is spending the rest of her life in prison, along with several other members of her criminal network. The FBI estimates that their investigation, which started with my case, has prevented dozens of other elderly people from being victimized by these predators. Garrett has become a nationally recognized expert on elder abuse prevention. He's testified before Congress about the need for stronger protections for elderly Americans, and his work has helped pass legislation that makes it harder for criminals to exploit vulnerable seniors. As for me, I'm living my best life at 76 years old. I have a beautiful home, wonderful friends, and a son who calls me every day just to tell me he loves me. I volunteer at the local animal shelter. I've learned to paint watercolors, and I'm even dating a lovely gentleman named Frank who treats me like a queen. But most importantly, I've learned that you're never too old to start over, never too old to fight back, and never too old to demand the respect you deserve. Garrett and Margaret thought they were dealing with a weak, helpless old woman who could be easily intimidated and manipulated. Instead, they discovered that Eleanor Whitman was nobody's victim.
And you know what?
That knowledge has made all the difference. Thanks for joining me on this incredible journey of survival, revenge, and ultimately, redemption. If this story inspired you, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to join our community at Her True Stories. We share amazing tales of brave women who refuse to let anyone define their worth or limit their possibilities. Remember, you're stronger than you know, and it's never too late to write a new chapter in your life story. Until next time, this is Her True Stories, where every ending is really just a new beginning.